Well, why don't we go ahead and start the meeting? Let me see where we are here. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and start it. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome to September. And Carl, as the, hey, there's Skip, as our craft presenter today. Carl's going to give us an inspiration.
A very short one. It's one I used in my career doing projects, and it was from Aristotle. It's well begun is half done. Well begun is half. And a lot of people have used that through their own ways of saying it, but it's really always the same. A good start means you're halfway done.
Mm-hmm. Is that like 80% of life is just showing up?
That's 80%, yeah. That's Woody Allen said that, right?
Yeah, I think he did. Thank you. And so Larry Mills, our president-elect, is standing in for Sergeant at Arms Colleen today to introduce visitors.
Great. Thanks, President Nancy. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I am the acting Sergeant at Arms today because Colleen is on vacation for a couple weeks. So I'll be acting Sergeant at Arms next week as well. And my primary duty right now is to introduce visitors. And the one visitor I see there is Skip Brand, who has been with us before. Good morning, Skip.
Good morning.
Owner of Healdsburg Running Company and a good friend of our club. And we welcome you, Skip, and look forward to your comments in a few minutes.
Thank you for having me.
I think that's the only visitor that I see. I'm scanning all these little squares in front of me, and I think that is our only visitor this morning, President Nancy, so I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, our guest speaker today will be our own Bob Mosby, so that's why we don't have another guest speaker, an unknown face in our midst. So we will look forward to hearing from Bob shortly. So Skip, why don't we have you talk about Food to Fighters? Skip, Healdsburg Running Company, is like this amazing promoter of everything. I don't know where you get the energy, Skip. I see him at 7:15-ish in the mornings at my house working out.
Now you're starting rumors, Nancy.
With the girls. Skip's one of the girls. So, Skip, why don't you go ahead and talk to us about food to firefighters?
I sure will. Just a couple things before we get started. Just to sort of play with well done is half done. We are just getting started. We just did phase one, and the big thanks, it was called Food to Firefighters. And it's only possible because of my relationship to Andy Escobar and helping with Live Like Drew. You all allowing us to use a 501c3 that's independent from any person or fire or anything is super important. And being sorry guys to say it, a Kiwanian years ago as a professor, the service organizations are the only place that doesn't stop when there's an emergency. We also learned that something else doesn't stop in an emergency called Mexican restaurants and groceries. But let me just say I'm super happy with Nancy helping out. And then I got a lot of counsel from a gentleman named Will Seppi. So he may just only be a lowly baker, and I'm only a very, very lowly shoemaker. I don't even make shoes, I sell them. But Will helped me a lot informally, so I want to make sure that Nancy and Andy and Will get credit because I just did a little bit of work. So just to get you it was a big problem to start, and my background is I'm a son of a firefighter. So literally every son of a firefighter wants to be a firefighter rather than a shoe salesman. So sure enough, the big problem was, if you guys are familiar, you guys probably go out to dinner every night to help restaurants, so thank you. Many people do not. So whoever gives the most usually has the least. So what we were worried about is the restaurants would give food. They would give it without any questions. The restaurateurs, the staff would do it without any questions. They would not get a 20% tip. And we would push our restaurants into worse dismay than they are. And since I live downtown, they're in disaster, our restaurants. So that's really the reason why I wanted to feed firefighters, number one, because I'm a son of a fireman. And then number two, you don't sell many shoes during a fire. So I had a shitload of time, and that's a technical term. So guys, just to let you know, what we were able to do is the big thing around grassroots groups like the Rotary is you like to raise money by the drink or by the glass, not by the bottle. What doesn't work is a very wealthy guy, and we love wealthy guys and girls. If they simply give money, typically it gets wasted. So the pressure restaurants have is when they get food to give away, they have to cook it. So if you, Chris Call, bring your strawberries from the farm to Dominica at Castelli's, she gets a little pressure, her butt gets tight, and she has to make food, whether she wants to or not. Second thing is my stress was anybody who gives me 1 ounce of food, I have to, it's in love and it's good, I have to hand it to a firefighter, ask him his name, hand him a food to firefighter sticker so he would not only eat the burrito, but he would know where it's coming from, and he really appreciated it. So that's simply the problem, and we did a solution. Thanks to you all and your giving, it was about 42,000, well, let me be exact. Who's the accountant here at Rotary? Raise your hand.
Andy.
Andy, Terry, and Andy's an accountant.
So
I'm a reformed accountant.
Okay. So Andy, we're at 42,153. So very, very grateful. Can't even describe in words. I've been handing out sifters, so I'm very emotional more now than not for feeding firefighters, for those burned out. But that's a really good amount of money. Now let's get back to the big issue. You all have a question. How much did the kids spend? And I'm only 54, so very young. How much did the kids spend on food? So we spent, my bride, by the way, worked with Citibank. If you ever get a brand new card and try to charge $8,741.70, all in about, a week. So that's what we spent on the card. I have bills coming from Will Seppi and Dan and Journeyman, which will probably add another, I'd say we'd probably spent, just to make sure I use whole numbers, Andy, probably about $12,000. And no one got too much, and many people would not take money. So the only ask I have for Rotary is those who would not take money, we probably have to acknowledge them. I will do something from the running store, but something from Rotary would mean a lot. And those type of people that just won't take anything. And it's a shame because I wanted to give them stuff. Do you want to know names of people and folks, or do you want to get that later? That takes a long time.
Go ahead, mention it now, Skip.
Okay, you sure?
Yep.
So guys, Garrett's, I probably got about $697 from them, but they gave me like $500, and they just built a whole bunch of sifters. Do you guys know what that is?
Yeah.
So you use it to sift out and find your items at your house. So in front of the store, if you guys all know, tell everybody to go get them. The community is super proud, and they won't go to Red Cross. They won't go to FEMA. They will go to Andy if they're insured by Andy. Thank you, Andy. But they do need to come and get socks and underwear and everything at the store. So guys, that was them. El Sombrero probably cooked Jimmy. He got 1,000, probably gave 1,000. So Mexican restaurants never close. They came in at 4 a.m. to make burritos. Leo at Lola's gave over 100 or 200 free. And I got him $700. I couldn't get him any more. And then probably Starbucks a little bit, but not much. They started giving. But the biggest hero in all of this, are all of you familiar with our 2 grocery stores? So we're fortunate enough to have Big John's, and I do have like maybe $500 to them, but they gave sandwiches right away. Steve at Big John's was good, and they worry it's COVID, guys, so they don't just give because they can give it. They worry, are they giving a sandwich out that may not be put in a cooler right, may not be kept well by me. So if you did see me on the back roads, I was driving well, not safe and everything, but making sure everything got out there. Some other highlights are another grocery store wouldn't take any money from me. So just so you know what it's like to have a local manager of Safeway, his name is Steve Vertucci. He had a pocket full, and I'm talking pocket full of receipts. Not one fireman paid at Safeway, and they still don't today. So he probably spent not as much as I did, but probably $4 or $5 grand. Remember, guys, his vendors like Red Bull and like Gatorade and like Yerba Mate started giving product because he was so good. He was so good. Windsor followed suit at Safeway. So we really finally we love Big John's, but we got to really thank Safeway. That was big. I won't highlight any more other than Pizzeria did a great job, and there's a whole bunch of others like Journeyman is most preferred and Ken Smoke most preferred by firemen. I did a really good job not just getting them what they wanted, which is meat, but I did use everybody because I didn't want, when I published this list through Rotary, that, you know, everybody thinks somebody was taking advantage or everything else. And I do believe, Andy, we should be 100% transparent.
Agreed.
One last thing, there is only one expense I'm not proud of, but it's a real one. It is food at night, but it's called, those of you who are not farmers or not firemen won't like it maybe, but we gave a lot of Copenhagen out. So chewing tobacco, maybe, I'm not even gonna say the number, it's not worth it, but at night during a fire, these guys need to stay up. You'd think they could do, they can do no quick energy type stuff that we can do, no CBD, no any of that. So many of them chew, sadly. All the Oregon boys chew. Hell, they don't have many teeth, and I love those guys. Redding, but all the firehouses took chew, and that's something only me could hand out. They can't officially hand that out, and you'd be surprised how appreciative they are if they're going to work 10 nights in a row, or many of them, the Copenhagen was good. But that's all I have. I have a bunch of stickers, and then I just have 3 things in closing, if I could do that. I know you guys have a big meeting.
Go ahead. Yeah.
A little bit time, Nancy?
Yeah, really quick though, if you don't mind.
So here's the big deal, guys. The work, thanks for saying well done, is half done. We are not even a fifth of the way done. Fire season just started. So the next phase for me is those that are burned out. What you all are doing as individuals, I give them underwear, t-shirts, socks, shoes. And by the way, I can't give that away. The store does not do that well. But it's my brands that are doing it. And that's what I did in the last fire. I didn't feed firefighters. So that's going on right now. And just tell citizens if they want to help people burned out, just buy gift cards. They're so proud they won't do anything. And you're in shock for about, how long, Andy, are you in shock when your home is lost?
A month.
Yeah, I would say the first week is really hard. You're sketchy. Nothing makes sense, but it's bad. These people are really strong people up on Mill Creek, up at Brock, up at Chemise, up at Big Ridge, at Lake Sonoma, and they definitely need our help. And it's just dumb stuff that you want to help them with. So I'm open 100%. We start at 8 in the morning, so new hours for evacuees. We're still helping firefighters, but that's phase 2. And then phase 3 is right here. See this Racer 5? We'll do what's called Wallbridge Fire Brew. So it's beer that's in the name of the fire. The Sonoma Pride made about $7 million. We probably think we'll do maybe half of that, but I've got a Russian River shirt on, we'll go to putting an effort on where the brewers will help raise for the fire department, mostly because we've got a tough season. And one last, I'll take any questions for anybody. Who do you think buys 100,000 cases of fire beer? Firemen. It's crazy. They buy more than half of it. They buy it to thank Jay Beckwith for saying hi when they're here. They thank it for Diane Butcher when she's nice. They thank it for Thomas. They thank it for Lance. They thank it for Fred Walter. They thank everybody by buying the beer. So it's really important to close out a fire with something like that. And I'm hoping that I don't run it, but I am getting it started. So if you all know brewers or know friends at breweries, one brewery will lead it. It may be Bear, it may not. They're very busy. And I don't want to burden any of them, but it'd probably be about 10 breweries brewing Wallbridge fire beer. So that's all I have, and I'll answer any questions. And I really am honored to be here and thankful that you guys trusted me, Andy and Nancy and Will and the rest of you, to raise money for just a tough time. And we did it pretty quick.
Skip, thank you. I'm going to follow up with you on these folks who wouldn't take money, and we'll put our heads together here to figure out a nice way to recognize them. Thank you for letting us know that. Does anyone have any really quick questions? We're running out of time here.
Sorry, Nancy.
Is this continuing, or is it done, or what's the end point of this thing?
Very good question, Dan. We debated it. By the way, I did not give enough credit to Kim Neal while I was driving around, and I know the roads by running them. She ran food to firefighters. So Kim put updates out. We'll put one out today. There's two schools of thought, Dan, and I'll take your input because you asked. But one school of thought is we just started fire season, and we can't, I'm told by GoFundMe, my friend is the president, he said the first time you raise for something, you raise well. The second, you raise about less than a half, and the third, it's not even worth doing. So the belief from GoFundMe is you let it ride, but you don't advertise it. Those who are burned out will want to give or whatever, but the idea is we have a long fire season. If you're okay as Rotary, you can vote, but the belief is we keep that balance in reserve because something may happen with another fire. Just to let you know, on the way to Russian River to my meeting with Chief Boaz and the crew at Russian River, our Rada Lane was on fire, and I literally couldn't get to my meeting because there was a small brush fire. So that's my thought, Dan, that we let it sit. I won't advertise it, but I don't think there's a reason to shut it down unless Rotary is very worried about the cause and the effort.
Question. What's the name on GoFundMe?
Oh, if you're all in front of your computers, it's just a hashtag. If you know what that is a pound sign, and it's called food, FOOD. The letter or the digit 2, and then firefighters. Firefighters includes men and women. I had firemen at first, but Nancy helped me out in her backyard. So it's food to firefighters, and this is your logo. And so we put we put this on every package so they knew where it was from, and then I had to date all the food so it didn't go old. But just type in Google GoFundMe hashtag food to firefighters, and you'll see Rotary and Kim Neal.
I think I also included the link in an email I sent, although I find out my emails, things get buried at the bottom. So, all right, Skip, thank you so much. We will keep this momentum going and get some big hugs out to everybody. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow morning.
I'll see you in the morning, not today.
Okay, moving along. Carl, that's a hard act to follow.
Yeah, I can wait if you want.
Carl Milfeit, one of our newest members. It's his turn for a craft talk. Take it away.
All right, so I'll try to be quick then. So I will walk through my career in ERP consulting, and ERP is Enterprise Resource Planning, which is a horrible name for, which is really a large computer system that handles most of your business needs, from the general ledger, APAR, sales, inventory, purchasing, and usually specialties that fit your unique needs. But I moved here in '82 after Pittsburgh died from the recession. Pittsburgh died because steel died. So I moved out here, and I got here Thanksgiving '82. I got a job by Christmas for an old San Francisco company that started during the Golden Gate Bridge being built. They spun the cables. They spun those things to hold the bridge up on site. So they needed ball bearings, and ball bearings were kind of a new thing. They came from Germany. So the SKF company asked one of the engineers if he wanted to quit the bridge building and start a company to bring ball bearings to the West Coast, and he did. So anyway, I'm working for this company, and the son of the founder, now much later on, right? The son of the founder's golfing buddies were all buying computer systems for their companies, so he bought one. They came and installed it, and it sat in the room for a couple months. Nobody did anything with it. And so I started playing in the evenings and weekends, and I basically set the system up for this company. So sales, inventory, purchasing, general ledger, accounts receivable, and a general ledger. And in the meanwhile, I was going to graduate school in the evenings, so getting MBA. So I decided to change jobs because they didn't seem to really care that I did all that work. So I found ADP. ADP, everybody knows from payroll. And a lot of companies in the early 80s, if they knew anything about computers, it was because they used ADP for payroll. So a lot of small businesses went to ADP and asked them if they'd help them get more of a computer system than just the payroll bit. So they bought a company, and they thought they could install this new big systems with their normal ADP people, which basically come out and ask questions, and you have to have yes or no answers. And if you said maybe, their head would explode. So they tried selling the system to all their clients, and it wasn't going well. So they decided they needed to hire people who weren't ADP people. And I came in, and I was working on the West Coast here, and was complaining about how they were not really treating the clients right by making them all use this system the same way. They thought they could do the payroll model. So on phone calls back to New Jersey, somebody heard me, and they started flying me back to New Jersey to explain how they should change their approach to the systems. I was offered a job in New Jersey, which I said, thanks, but no thanks. And eventually when I left them, after I finished my MBA, I then went to another company in San Francisco, the movie theater company, Century Theaters. Probably most of you know Century Theaters. They had a distribution system, another company that sold everything in a movie theater, from toilet paper to projectors. If it was in a movie theater, we sold it. They had installed a Lawson financial system, which is another ERP. So now I'm basically in my third software system and an integrated software systems. Early on we were all fairly new. This was kind of a new thing in the mid 80s. And I started doing the Lawson, and I couldn't believe this was a big company out of Minneapolis, and they didn't have any really standard closing procedures for month-end closing, financial closing. So I'm complaining about that. Somebody in Minneapolis kind of hears what I'm saying. They fly me back to Minneapolis, and I explain what I was talking about. Eventually, though, I end up working and figuring out to do it on my own through data dumps, et cetera, and worked in corporate at the movie theater. I was out of the warehouse business there. And they eventually decided to get a new system. So I selected J.D. Edwards, and I installed J.D. Edwards at the movie theater company and their warehouse. 9 months, one consultant. It's a $750 million business. I installed a complete system myself in 9 months. And during the review, I was told I let some of my other duties slip while I did this implementation project. So I quit. And that was like 1995. And I went out on my own. And the rest of my career, I was an independent consultant installing J.D. Edwards. J.D. Edwards is it was a fully integrated system with lots of modules. So I went through a whole series of careers, a whole series of companies, all different than the other and more fascinating. Public Storage, the big NYK shipping company, which is a big Japanese shipping company that does shipping logistics from the dress shop somewhere in the middle of China all the way to the dress shop in Healdsburg. NYK can do that whole logistical movement. So they had all kinds of companies. I did tons of stuff in there. Who else? And just a various array of companies for some 16 years, shopping malls. So J.D. Edwards is big in grower management, which means Kendall Jackson, Constellation, and the Modesto guy, Gallo, uses them. Although I never ironically got to work with any of those companies, but I basically developed skills. And I think my skills were listening, developing more sharp analytical mind, and what I call bilingual. I understood what business needed. I understand what they asked for, what their problems were, and I knew what developers could do, coders could do. So I could speak both languages, and I creatively used the software with the littlest amount of customization as possible, and I put up various companies on systems. And so I was a bilingual. The other thing I think the skill I had was I make people laugh in meetings, because the last thing you want to do when you're working in a company is have to do an implementation project for your software. So I keep people happy there. So I went through that whole career. That's what I did. I stumbled into something by sitting in this old bearing company in San Francisco, working in the evenings myself for fun, and it turned into a career.
Well, you are a man of many talents. Where were you during the Affordable Care Act when we were trying to get that up and running?
That was just one thing, one talent. I just got lucky. I found it.
Well, you have Carl has a beautiful garden. And his wife is a mixologist. I keep telling Fred that. So hopefully we can have cocktail hour together one day soon. Carl, thank you. I hope we can do more to get to know you face to face. All of our dream. And
that'll be 2021.
Pardon me?
That'll be 2021 from what I read.
Yeah.
We got to try get our little groups together in one way or another. So to keep things moving along, because Dr. Bob would like a few extra minutes on his topic, I'm going to skip a few things like recognitions today. But Jay Beckwith has a message for us. I think something we can all anyway, I'll let Jay take it away.
Good morning.
Speechless.
The talk from Skip is so moving. And I think after we hear from Bob, those two things are going to fit together in an interesting way. Nancy did a lot of work reaching out to our members, both current and past, to find out what they thought of our club. And one of the things that she came up with was that circumstances have changed for many people. And the club, for one reason or another, is no longer relevant to them. And so we took it upon ourselves to look at that and say, how could we make our Rotary Club more relevant to people? And we've been kind of
chewing away at that a little bit. And Skip's example is exactly what is more relevant than what Skip is doing to everyone? We're all helping the firefighters who are helping us stay here. And the other thing that's happened that is absolutely unusual and unprecedented is that we've been Cinema Strong since 2017, but we can't go to the tools we used last time to recover because of COVID. We can't go and have a big group hug. So we need to deal with the psychological impact and the stress that's happened. And it's happened to everyone in our community, and particularly to the children who are going to be damaged for life by the social isolation. It's actually damaging their brains. So this is a huge issue. It's going to go on for the next at least year, probably 2. And so I would like to propose to you, and I will give you some materials to look at and some ideas, but I would like to propose to us that we make the mission for Nancy's tenure recovery, emotional recovery from the disasters, and to begin to heal ourselves. And we're already doing that. We do it by little projects. We do it by giving. We do it by being emotionally present for each other. And so there are literally 1,000 things that we can do, and we can begin doing them now, and we can be inclusive, and we can be safe. We have to make our projects open-ended so that if somebody made a commitment to do something with the club and they're going out the door and they get a call from one of their friends who have lost their house, they're okay not to have to come to the project, right? They can pivot. And we, as Skip pointed out so beautifully, Rotary is in a perfect position. We bring the skills, we bring the talents, we bring the resources, we bring the connections to make an impact. So with your permission, I will give you some stuff, and we're going to make it fun. Damn it, we're going to make it fun. So Nancy,
Have fun.
damn it, you're going to have fun.
Thank you, Jay. I know that Diane has a topic. Diane, would you just really fast mention your student? You're on.
Unmute yourself.
Oh no! Here we go, Jen. Good morning. In the past, for an international project brought to us by Herb and Bev Lieberman, we were supporting some students at a school in Kenya. The students that I had a personal relationship with have gone on to college. One of them is going to the Catholic University and studying law. That is Martin. He's the older of the two. And then Linus is the younger. They're not brothers. They're just friends. And Linus is studying at Kenyatta University. He's studying business. And I've been supporting both these boys, my husband and I, my kids. I actually involved my children when they got to a certain age. I said, why don't we skip the Easter Bunny this year? You guys are not going to get Easter baskets, and we're going to, put these boys through college. So that's what we ended up doing. It's about $600 per year per student for a university education. They do receive some grants from the government, the Kenyan government, and unfortunately those grants don't always come through, and a lot of times I'll get some kind of scrambled emails in the middle of the night because they need fees. They can't take their final exams because their fees haven't been paid. So I just kind of wanted to bring it to the club's attention. We're not doing a whole lot right now internationally. There are some projects going on, but in the past, Pam and Herb had always brought us some of these great projects. So I just want to make you guys aware of it. We're okay right now. We just bought Linus a new computer. All of his classes are online because of COVID-19 this year. They're not going to do any in-person for the foreseeable future, and the libraries are closed. He was using a public computer in the library, it was a hardship for him to begin with, trying to study and finish his his studies that way. So just wanted to bring it to your attention. In the future, I might request a pass the hat if some other fees come up for these guys that I can't cover. So just wanted to kind of let you know about that. So that's it.
Thanks, Diane. So we all along, we've had an international project funded entirely by the Bookers, and nobody knew it. So thank you so much. Andy, did you have anything real fast about the Drew Golf Tournament?
Yeah, really fast. The tournament officially started September 1st. If you haven't signed up to play and intend to play, please do so. You have until the 30th. Continue to remind your friends and neighbors that the tournament is going on. And we could always use another few auction items if anybody has something that they'd like to donate to the auction. Thank you.
Diana and I did sign up yesterday. We're going to play on September 9th, but it'd be fun to have a couple more women. I'm sorry, we're a sexist team. If anyone has any wives, girlfriends, neighbors who like to play golf and are female, please let us know, because girls just want to have fun. All right. And with that, I am going to introduce our guest speaker, unless anyone has anything else. We do want to check in with all you guys. I know Edward has been in the heart of the fire zone. Tom was evacuated, and Diane and John held their ground. So I hope we can kind of unpeel the onion in the next few weeks and let people talk about what they've experienced. So, but for now, I'm going to introduce our own Dr. Bob Mosby. Bob grew up in Dallas, and he graduated from the University of Texas at Austin. Isn't that the Longhorns? Beautiful school. I ran by it. His first job was at ASU, Arizona State, where he was professor in counseling psychology and on the staff of the Counseling and Consultation Center. In 1975, he founded the Gestalt Institute of Phoenix, and he and his organization went on to teach and train over 900 therapists, psychologists, and psychiatrists in Gestalt therapy. He maintained a private practice from 1984 to 2005 in Phoenix, and I'm sure he's glad he's here now. It's pretty darn hot there. In 2005, he moved to his beloved Healdsburg to help a friend start a winery here. And in 2011, because he missed being in the psychology world, he returned to being a psychologist at Psych Strategies in Santa Rosa. And I've looked on that website, and there's 30 psychiatrists. It's a huge group of psychiatrists. And he's currently president of Psych Strategies. Bob is going to be speaking to us today on the topic of unconscious bias versus unconscious bios, which is what I put in the email. So, Bob, you're muted. So if you will unmute, it's all yours.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. And I'm going to try and work this share screen and see if I can get my presentation up. All right. All right. Miracle of miracles, it all worked. So what we're talking about today is unconscious bias, which is also known as implicit bias or mind bugs. And this is really a field of psychology that belongs to social psychologists. So social psychologists do a lot of really creative experiments where they're looking at what we do as human beings, especially some of the strange things that we do as human beings. And when I was in graduate school, the social psychology classes were always some of my favorites just because they really do very, very interesting work. And let me just preface this by saying whenever we're talking about unconscious attitudes or beliefs, that's always a tricky thing to talk about with people
And just keep an open mind as we go through this. And hopefully, if you could hold your questions to the end, it would help because I may answer some of them as we go along. So let's just start by showing you this slide. Some of you may have seen this slide before, but as you can clearly see from this slide, those two tables are the exact same size. Those two tables are the exact same size. And if I was doing this presentation in person, I would be able to hold a ruler up to the length of the table on the left and show you that it is the exact same length of the table on the right. And the same thing goes with the width of those two tables. Now, I know that as you're sitting there looking at this, you're saying to yourself, that can't be, but if you have a moment, just take a piece of paper and hold it up to the length of the table on the left and mark it, and then hold it up to the table on the right, and you will see that they are in fact the exact same size. So what's going on here? Well, we're dealing with something which we call mind bug. So let's just talk a minute about what's going on. Your eye receives information. So your eyes actually saw that those tables were the same size. Your brain registers what your eyes are seeing, but it's your mind that interprets information. And it was your mind that said, looking at a two-dimensional picture, your mind projected that picture to 3 dimensions and said, oh, those are different size tables, when they're the exact same size tables. So it's your mind that interprets what you're seeing that sometimes gets you in trouble. So what we're essentially looking at is an error in the mind's ability to perceive a pair of objects as they actually are. And this is an important characteristic of your mind. Your mind does a great deal of its work automatically, unconsciously, and unintentionally. And if you just stop and think about it, you know this. You do all sorts of things without really thinking about it. And in fact, it's somewhat helpful that your mind works this way. So if you think about magicians, they do all sorts of things that are tricks of the mind that are quite amazing when you see it. And it's kind of fun, but when your mind is making an error in its ability to perceive accurately, it can become a problem. Well, this is called mind bugs, what we're dealing with, but it becomes a problem when your mind is seeing something that it thinks it's seeing and it's not seeing it. And it's a serious problem when you consider the number of wrongful convictions that have been produced by eyewitness testimony. There's something called the Innocence Project, which has overturned many eyewitness convictions of criminals with DNA tests when the DNA test showed that these criminals weren't anywhere near the scene of the crime. So what your mind is interpreting can sometimes get you into trouble. Our minds don't always interpret accurately what we're seeing. And this is particularly important when a policeman might see something that somebody is holding and thinks it's a gun when actually it's just a cell phone or something innocent. They're holding their wallet, but that kind of misinterpretation creates all kinds of problems for the whole society. So we're talking about unconscious bias. So seeing is based upon what you're consciously seeing. It becomes much more complicated when we start talking about what you're unconsciously seeing or thinking or unconscious attitudes that you might have. So these are also known as mind bugs or implicit bias. So let's just talk about what we're talking about. Unconscious bias, what is that? And unconscious bias is essentially, it is a social stereotype about certain groups of people that people form outside of their own conscious awareness. So let me just say that again so you can kind of get that in your head. Unconscious bias is a social stereotype about certain groups of people that forms outside of your own conscious awareness. Now, if you're sitting there, and I hope you are sitting there saying, how is that possible that something can form outside of my own conscious awareness? You exist in a social system where you're constantly being bombarded by things on television, by movies, by things that you read, by what you were taught by your parents, by what you were taught by your peers, and by your own experiences. So you have a flood of stuff coming at you, and a lot of that gets in you whether you want it to get in you or not. So an unconscious bias is often incompatible with what you consider to be your conscious values. So you may have a conscious value that says, I treat people equally, I'm not biased towards any group of people, but you may have unconscious behaviors that say otherwise. So this term unconscious bias and mind bugs was really created by Mahjaran Banaji of Harvard University and Anthony Greenwald of the University of Washington. And they wrote a book that was titled Blind Spot, which really enumerates and talks about this whole phenomenon and all of the extensive research that has gone on. And I encourage all of you to read that book. It's quite a phenomenal book. So let's just look at a minute real quickly as to why does your mind take shortcuts? Why did your mind quickly look at the slide of the two tables and say they're totally different when they were the same size? Well, that's because your mind processes about 11 bits of information every moment. And you actually consciously process about 40 bits of that 11 million bits of information, which means that 99.9996% of your mental processing is taking place on the unconscious level. And that's actually somewhat helpful to you that your mind is doing that. If you had to contemplate stairs and what stairs were and how you were going to negotiate them every time you came to stairs, it would be troublesome to try to get through your day. And I'm sure that we've all had the experience of driving somewhere, and when you got there, you didn't remember most of the drive. You were thinking about something else. Your mind was working on something else. And it was the automatic or unconscious part of your mind that was doing most of the driving. And that's helpful to us. So there is a good part of this automatic functioning. So let's just talk a minute about how you go about studying biases. And you would think that the easiest way to study biases or prejudices would be to simply ask people what they think. You ask them what they think, you record it. However, there's a problem with that. And the problem is people don't always tell the truth. So people lie on applications all the time about their age, about their height, about their weight, and people lie about what they think, and people lie about their attitudes. So this is a well-known phenomenon in the field of psychology, and especially psychologists that study people, and it's known as impression management. And it has been researched for 70 years now, probably, how to deal with this. How do you deal with the fact that people don't tell the truth? So how do you know if the data that you're getting actually means anything or not? So even when people have been told, this is from experiments, even when people have been told The answers that you put on this sheet of paper will be seen by nobody. It will be fed directly into a computer. They did experiments that proved that people were still fudging their answers and still not telling the exact truth. So many psychological tests, probably the most widely used personality test in the world is a test called the MMPI, the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Test. And the reason this test is used by everybody is because it has 3 scales on it that determine if the person taking the test, 1, was lying, 2, were they trying to appear more healthy than they were, and 3, were they trying to appear more sick than they were, because sometimes people try to do that. So psychology has dealt with this phenomena for a long time. And Anthony Greenwald, one of the authors of Blind Spot, created a whole new way to measure attitudes that we form about things. And he called it the implicit association test. And this test, it's a little complicated to explain, but what it does is it asks you to associate words with faces. So it might say to you, click on all of the positive words and all of the white faces that are presented to you. And it times you on how long it takes you to do that. It then asks you to click on all of the negative words and the African-American faces that you're looking at. And it times you on how long it takes you to do that. And then the test reverses that. And it times you on how long it takes you to click on negative words and write white faces and positive words and black faces. The belief here is that the quicker you can do something, the easier it is for your mind. You're dealing with something that you believe. The longer it takes you, the harder it is to do this. You're having a problem with that. So that just goes through what I just told you about. So this test was created in 1994 and has been given now to over 4 million people all across the world. So it has incredible validity to it. And they have developed it to not only look at race and your attitudes towards race, they've developed it to look at male-female differences, young versus old, gray versus straight. They've developed it to look at your attitudes about math ability in males versus females, leadership. It's quite an extensive test. And I would encourage everybody listening to this, if you just Google the implicit association test, you can take it for yourself on any of the topics above. And it will show you, I think, some surprising attitudes that you might have that you didn't think that you had. And it's a little bit cumbersome when you get to the site because they ask you a lot of questions about who you are, your race, your age, etc. And then it sort of takes you through some practice rounds. Stick with it and get to the point where you're able to actually take the test on racism or whatever you want to take it on, because it's quite fascinating. So let's look at the results of this test. With regards to race, about 75% of the people taking this test reveal a white preference. And that is across the 4 million people that have taken it all across the world. This includes many, many Black people, brown people, Asian people. So many people that took this test who were Black were horrified to find that they had, in fact, a white preference. So how does that happen? Well, I think this quote from the Supreme Court decision on Brown versus the Board of Education which made segregation illegal, is really important. And essentially what it's saying is that race segregation generates a feeling of inferiority that may affect the children's hearts and minds in a way that is unlikely to ever be undone. So imagine if you were a child during segregation and you had to go to a separate school, you had to go to separate restrooms, and that was your life. That gets in you, that sense of that you're inferior to another race gets in you. And as I said earlier, the society as a whole is getting in us every day of our lives. The society is pounding you with, it's showing you movies where the lead character is almost always a white male. Now, that gets in you in all sorts of ways. It's not announcing that white males are superior, but just seeing that over and over and over again begins to get in you that in fact, that's the way it is. That's how these unconscious attitudes and beliefs get in us as people. One of the interesting thing, and certainly interesting for our group, one of the interesting biases that this test showed is that there is an incredibly strong negative bias towards age, with an incredible strong preference towards youth. Well, we all wish that we were younger, right? But the strength of this bias was somewhat startling even to the researchers, who couldn't believe that there was such a bias towards older people. It's interesting to me because one day my wife said something to me about being invisible, and I said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "When you get older, you become invisible." She said, "When I go into the grocery store, nobody sees me. They just see an old lady. They don't really see me any longer." And that's how that kind of bias towards age comes into effect. Now, I don't know if you know who Malcolm Gladwell is. He's an author who has written many best-selling books. He wrote a book called The Tipping Point. He wrote a book called Outliers. He's pretty consistently on the New York Times bestseller list. His mother was Black. And when he took the implicit association test, he was horrified to discover that he had a Black is bad association in the test. He had a strong white preference. And he couldn't believe it that this person, his mother, who was Black, who he trusted implicitly, he had a negative association to that race of people. So it's quite amazing for people to discover what's inside of them through these tests. So let's just look at some examples of unconscious bias in our local culture. So Leah Gold, our now ex-mayor, ran into some trouble because it was suggested in the city council meeting, I hope I have this right, that they should look at the use of excessive force on the Healdsburg Police Department. She said she thought that would be a waste of time. Now, I understand why she said that, because I think a lot of us know Kevin Burke. He's in the Noon Rotary group. He's an incredible police chief. He has a lot of thoughts about who should be on the police force of Healdsburg. And she knew that they would probably be found not to engage in excessive force, so she said it would be a waste of time. But the unconscious bias here was her not understanding how important that is for some people to know one way or the other. All she had to do was say, sure, let's look at that, especially if she thought the results would be positive. But she missed it, and it cost her quite a bit, I think. Another local example is David Hilbertson, who was the president of the Sonoma County Alliance. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this because there were numerous articles about this in the Press Democrat. He wrote an article that was in the Press Democrat that started with "All Lives Matter." And that was, I know somebody who knows him very well. And they said that he is an incredible stand-up guy. He's not biased or prejudiced in any way. He does all sorts of things to help people. But he didn't understand what that meant. He didn't understand what starting an article with "All Lives Matter" meant in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement. It cost him dearly. He had to resign from president of that organization. And many of the very large companies in that organization quit that organization because he wrote that article. In addition, just to give you an example of ageism, I worked with a person who was a computer engineer who had an incredible, great resume. He was a guy that brought software projects to fruition within companies. He could not get a job. He was 55 years old and he could not get a job. And what happened, I hope I'm not frozen because I'm seeing a sign that says this, my internet is unstable, but I think I'm back. So what happened to this poor guy was, because of the strength of his resume, he was always called in for an interview. Frequently, he was one of the last two people that they were interviewing and considering for the job. The job always went to the younger person, always. And so effectively at 55 years old, couldn't work anymore in his field. And this next one is a difficult one because it was surprising to me. I worked with a woman who lost her house in the Tubbs fire, and she was Black. So she doesn't have a place to live. She's trying to find a place to live. She was working with her insurance company, and she would put her name on various lists, and they would call and say, "Okay, you're up. Look at the apartment or house, whatever it was." And when she would get there, suddenly she didn't qualify. Suddenly she didn't make enough money. This wasn't right. That wasn't right. She had that experience numerous times. She even drove by a place that had a sign that said "apartment for rent." She stopped and went in. And when they saw her, they said, "Oh, we've already rented that apartment. We just haven't taken the sign down." And she drove by that place 3 weeks in a row and the sign remained up. And that's right here in our own community. That kind of prejudice is going on in our own community. In a relatively, what we probably all think of as a relatively liberal, progressive community, that kind of prejudice is happening. And I'm hoping some of you saw the article in the Press Democrat of a woman who owns a painting company and she's Black. And she told the story of talking to these people on the phone multiple times. They were so excited for her to come out and give them a bid on painting their house. And when she got there and they saw that she was Black, they had suddenly decided that they weren't going to paint their house. So these are local examples of unconscious bias and how it is going on in our own community. And we're seeing it frequently in the paper. And I don't know if you just saw the recent example of, I think it was 50-something franchisees of McDonald's were suing McDonald's for the fact that because they were Black, they were put into restaurants in poor areas where it was more difficult for them to make a success. So a couple of other results of just these biases and how the people that wrote Blind Spot have just done numerous studies. I'm giving you just a few of those studies. One of the most interesting studies to me was a study they did where they simply showed a picture of a person to the subject in the study. This was just, they didn't know this person. It was just a random picture of a person. And they would ask this person, do you think the person in the picture would enjoy skiing? Do you think the person in the picture enjoys shopping? Do you think the person in the picture enjoys sports? And the results to the people that were doing this study was fascinating in that not one person in this study ever said, how would I know? I don't know this person. How would I know that? Everybody quite willingly made up stories as to what they thought the answer would be. Just by looking at the picture of a person, they would make up a quite long answer as to why this person would enjoy skiing or not enjoy skiing. So what this means is we as people are quite readily willing to project onto other people things that we think about them without knowing them at all. The other study that I want to point out to you that I think is really incredibly important, just to show you what happens in prejudice. This was a study of job listings. And the way they did this study was they created the exact same resume. One resume, and these were real job listings. One resume had a black sounding name and one resume had a white sounding name. And the researchers made sure that these names really were seen as black names or white names. What they found over and over was the people that had white sounding names got far more responses to their resume than the people that had black sounding names. Far more, like twice as many. They also have done this study with male name versus female names with the exact same results. Male names got far more responses than female names. This is the exact same resume. So we're not talking about any kind of difference in skills. We're simply talking about people reading something based on a person's name and making all sorts of associations about that person. But imagine if you're a part of that minority group and this is occurring in your life over and over and over, these kinds of slides. So what's going on here? Well, we all have unconscious biases or mind bugs. If you take the time to take the implicit association test, you'll find that you have those. The goal is to try to bring this into your conscious awareness. So anything that is unconscious to you can be brought into your conscious awareness. It's just a matter of taking the time to really look at your own behavior and pay attention to how you're behaving, paying attention to what you're doing. Think about the fact that you have many social interactions every day in which your automatic group preferences unintentionally put out group members at a disadvantage. Just think about when you go to a social event. What we all do is we gravitate to the people we know. And that's who we go to, that's who we talk to. You don't gravitate to the people you don't know. If it's an event that where you don't know anybody, you gravitate to the people who are most like you, your own group. So if you're a white male, you're going to gravitate to a group of other white males. If you're a white female, you're going to gravitate towards that group and so on. What happens in those kinds of interactions, though, is you're not having any contact with people that aren't like you. And it puts those people kind of out of the network. They don't have a chance to interact with people that are part of the majority culture. So in psychology, this is actually called disassociation. And disassociation is the occurrence in the same mind of mutually inconsistent ideas that remain isolated from one another. So an example, You believe that you treat everybody equally, that you have no prejudices. And let's say you're waiting for an elevator and the door opens and the person standing there is a black male. And so if you're a woman, maybe you grab your purse. If you're a male, maybe you check your wallet. Those kinds of behaviors are examples of your prejudice, even though you may be saying, I'm not prejudiced, I don't have a prejudice towards these people, but pay attention to your behavior, because your behavior is going to tell you a lot about what's hidden inside of you. So just a quick what to do with this. Be aware of your white privilege. And this is a hard one because a lot of people, I think, that are white don't understand that concept. They don't understand even what white privilege is. But white privilege is essentially the attitude of, I did it through hard work, they can do it through hard work. Right? We've all heard that. That's a very kind of prevalent belief. Beverly Tatum, who's a very well-known author, she wrote a book that was titled, Why Are All of the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? And what was fascinating about one of the things she talks about in this book is she would give her kids an assignment, and the assignment was to start a sentence with, I am, and then they were to finish it with whatever came to mind, and they had 60 seconds to write the sentence, then write another sentence, write another sentence. And what she noticed was that the white kids never wrote, I am white. They had no concept of the privilege of that gave them. She also noticed that the straight kids never said, I am straight or I am heterosexual. That was just a given to them because it's a part of the norm of the majority culture. So that notion that you have a privilege, a white privilege that grants you more than other people get is outside of our awareness. You don't know that when you send in your resume, and because you have a white sounding name, you're going to get called into that interview more than black people. You don't know that because you never see that. You think you got called in because you have this great resume. But a lot of things are operating in the background that we don't know about, we don't see. So that ordinary privilege makes it really impossible to see that you have advantages over other people. It's hard for us in the white majority to understand that we have tailwinds, and a lot of other people in the minority cultures have headwinds their entire life. So just a little bit more here. I know I'm almost out of time. Just steps that you might consider: be aware of your own behavior. If you find yourself being frustrated with someone, see if you can turn that into a curiosity about that person. Think about how your actions impact others. Listen to understand rather than debate. This is a critical one. When you're just debating with somebody, nothing really is happening. But if you really listen to try to understand where they are, you're going to get a lot further. If you can engage in a dialogue with the other is all those people that aren't like you, it will greatly expand your perspective in life. And just confronting, this is a quite interesting one, I think, confronting other people about their prejudice or biased behavior. Research has shown that this actually is helpful. Now, sometimes these kind of confrontations can be difficult and you would have to use your own judgment about whether it's worth it or not. But people that you know well, when you hear them being prejudiced or biased about something, confronting them about that, research has shown that even though they may not take it in face to face with you, later on they consider what was said to them and they use it to improve their behavior. So consider that confronting people really does help. And one way of confronting in a way that helps is just to say to people, would you consider another point of view? Or would you be open to hearing what I think about this? And when you say that to people and they say yes, you're creating a contract with them. So I see I'm out of time. I've talked way too long. If anybody has any quick questions, I'm happy to take questions before we have to stop.
I would let people, we can hang on if people have questions and want to, discuss a couple things. I mean, there's so much information here, Bob.
There is a lot. This I could easily teach a 3-semester or a 3-hour 1-semester course just on this topic. There's so much here. So the gist of this is to just become aware of your own behavior and what it's saying to you about what might be hidden in your unconscious prejudices that might be there.
Looks like Jay has something.
I was fortunate enough in my sophomore year of college to have a professor who I took every class he had. His main point was we create order and project our world moment by moment. And I have found that to be true from physics to psychology to child development. And the first 7 years of life, it's fascinating to see how the brain goes about creating its reality. It's extraordinary, and it is hardwired, and it is not just your brain, it's your gut, it's your whole being creates this thing. And if you're not working on your unconscious bias, moment by moment, you're not being real in this life.
That's right. That's exactly right. And those things that happen to us, many of us are of the age that we were living during the time of school segregation.
That's right.
Many of us, I went to an all-white school. There was no such thing as school segregation when I went to school. Many of us remember what it was like when bathrooms were separate, where Black people couldn't go into restaurants and so forth. So we have made a lot of progress in those areas, but there's still a lot of progress to be made in how we treat others.
Well,
all right.
I want to take that test.
Hey, Ciro's here.
Enlighten you. It will absolutely enlighten you. I encourage everybody to take it. Yes.
Bob, can you repeat the name of that, the IAT test, what it stands for?
Yes, it's the Implicit Association Test.
Thank you.
Well,
just want to point out Ciro Morales, our honorary member from afar, Florida. Hi, Ciro.
How you doing?
Ciro continues to work with us under the radar, helping us set up website things and such. So it's really nice.
Our own rocket man.
Yeah. I would have come earlier, but someone had a meeting at the time. So what the hell is wrong with you?
Well, you're welcome any week to show your lovely smiling face. We do miss you.
I miss you guys too. I really do.
Well, Bob, thank you so much. That was a lot of work and effort you put into that. And
my pleasure. My pleasure.
It went fast because it's every topic is relevant, and I'm sure we can all identify with so much of what you said. Carl, thank you for sharing a little bit of your life, and we hope to get to know you better. We want to find out about your dog and other parts of your life, as well as your technology background. Let's see, Skip is off the call, but definitely let's stay in touch on that front. That was amazing what he's put together. Diane, thank you for your help with our young people in Kenya. And Andy, everybody please get out there and either get on the auction or get a tea time and go out there and play your heart out for the Drew Esquivel Memorial Scholarship Fund. Jay, thank you for being our conscience and our heart and soul. So I will end the meeting. And next week, Will Seppi is our guest speaker. Is Will still on the call?
I think
Is that Will down there at 480-3860?
Yes, yes.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Will. Well, we look forward to hearing about, I think it's Costo Bakery, right?
What would you like to hear about? Anyone?
How about what your plans are as president of the Chamber of Commerce?
Interesting.
I hadn't thought about that. Gives you a week.
Gives me a week. Thanks, Fred.
Princess cakes. Okay, well, I appreciate everybody's participation this morning. And with that, I will adjourn the meeting. So have a good day, everybody. Breathe deep, but not too deep.